Hey guys, welcome to today's Fanalysis Lite. We are going to do some Star Wars discussions surrounding some of the rumors spilling out about Disney versus Kathleen Kennedy and how they kind of won her out after the poor reception of Solo and the how divisive The Last Jedi was and how the Star Wars fandom is kind of going down. Not even so much box office. It's even more so going on the business end with the theme park tickets and like merchandise. Like that's where their pockets really hurt. Not really so much the movie. The movie is kind of like a lead generation for their business, and then like it's like getting people to buy stuff that really like Disney's like, whoa, what's going on here? So there was and also this to preface, this is all rumor still right now, but most of it correlates pretty well with like what would be the truth. Considering that a week ago we did get an official announcement that these standalone films are on an indefinite hold, and that they're kind of reforming and kind of figuring out what Star Wars is going to be in the future. So this call doesn't sound too far-fetched. But what happened apparently is that there was a conference call with Bob Iger, who is the head of Disney. Apparently Marvel and Pixar actually sat in on that conference call. They didn't give their 2 cents or anything like that. But for me, it sounds like they were kind of there to kind of hear like, hey, like don't do what's happening over at Lucasfilm. Like, let's not have this happen with Marvel and Pixar or other like our babies and our other jewels. And that kind of stuff does happen. I used to work at a smaller production company in Century City, and there were conference calls like this where you would just sit in and just kind of literally just listen in to like what they were saying, but not actually like give any 2 cents. But yeah, we were just gonna talk about like what we feel about that, if we agree with their decision or and all that jazz.
Well, it does finally confirm our suspicions that Disney and Lucasfilm aren't really going to start taking notice until it starts to hurt their wallet. So yeah, that's business for you and all that jazz.
Right, which is one of the things I was trying to say is that like most people try to like point the blame story-wise to like Disney, like, oh, Disney is screwing this up, when really like
they're just it's just a business. Yeah,
they're just distributing the thing, and they only care when they say, hey, we're not getting a return on investment here, kind of a situation. And the main thing that's happening here is that yes, Bob Iger apparently wants Kathleen Kennedy out and he wants to replace her, but the issue is that no one wants to take her job. Like literally no one in the industry or anyone within that group is like willing to step up. And that JJ was one of the people that they wanted to get in on it, and he legit said no in the same way that he said no to Force Awakens initially, because it's just like too precious and he doesn't want to have that responsibility at all, which makes sense. Grace Randolph, who was one of the reporters who talked about the story, she gave the notion of maybe having Dave Filoni take over the company, but then that seems to be an issue because seems to be more creative.
Yeah, he's more of a creative than a business mind. Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think they need to go for a kind of co-leadership role. Someone leading the creative team and the focus of the story group, and then someone leading the financial planning, and having them distinctly separate, because the problems with these kind of large corporate entities is that when the money makers start to try and lean on the creative team, you don't do that. You let the creative team drive and make them bring the audience, because they're the ones who are actually doing it. That's why Star Wars was interesting and engaging in the first place. And I completely agree. Disney hasn't been controlling this from the start. They've basically just been pumping money into Lucasfilm, and Lucasfilm had the run of the mill. They could have done what they want with the franchise, and what they have done is not very pleasing to most people at this point, at least heavily divisive. Yeah.
And in a way, that's kind of
it
what
ranges
Lucas
from
did,
okay to not so good.
Yeah,
disastrous. But yeah, Lucas kind of did that even not so much even with the movies, but like doling it out to other properties and stuff like that. Like there was creative directors around, things like The Force Unleashed or the comics or the books, so that the Star Wars kind of thrived on that kind of a thing. But now that the basis isn't really working as well with this new series, because one of the things that's being brought up is that the notion that the new films, or in particular Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, were a bit too political for Disney's liking, and that they wanted to appeal to a broader audience and not alienate anyone, because Kathleen Kennedy in interviews has like alienated male fans like directly, saying that Star Wars does not need male fans, and it's like, why would you do that? That's like more than half of your fans.
It was in response
to the problem. It was in response to the problem of the backlash of Rey, because the whole which is ludicrous by itself. The people who are arguing that Rey shouldn't be female, or the fact that she's female is a part of a social justice warrior kind of movement, is laughably ridiculous. It's
nonsense.
Nothing to do with that. Don't get me wrong, that there is a sense of that SJW kind of presence in modern media, and in perhaps even to a certain extent in Star Wars, but not to the extent where they're literally casting a female lead for that reason. It's ridiculous. And even if that was the case, it doesn't warrant the kind of hate people are levying against the company.
And it's not even. And I hate that the story is turning that it's about that, when really it's about the story itself, like the core story.
Yeah,
and
it's
you know
quality,
what I mean? Like
it's the quality, not the actual base content itself. But her defense against it was just ridiculous. She was basically making it an us v them situation, which is the exact kind of divisiveness they want to avoid as a company and a creative team. So yeah, she's. For me, I agree that she shouldn't be the one leading the charge. I think she should be taken out off the kind of leadership position. But I'm not one of those people who think that would then suddenly solve the problem. I feel like it's a much more endemic in the way Star Wars is currently being presented as a business model and as a franchise than any one particular management member.
When I like that, they are kind of backtracking, because for a minute there they were trying to be Marvel and just kind of like dole out the films as quickly as possible, and like they literally were saying, we're gonna have a Star Wars movie a year, and I thought initially, I was like, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of more of a precious thing. You don't really want to oversaturate it. The reason Marvel, I think, can get away with that is because comics kind of work like that already, and the kind of characters that they're dealing with.
New issues come out every month. Yeah. There's so many titles.
And the comic book characters in those kind of stories like work. Go ahead, Connor.
I think the other thing is also just the way the movies are being handled, because within the MCU, especially lately, the directors are being given a lot more control over their product, whereas within Star Wars, the whole impression I'm getting is that Kathleen Kennedy is being very authoritarian in her management style. It's my way or the highway. And as a result,
3 directors have been cut off of that. The first was Josh Trank, which was, I think that one was an okay one, because based on his Fantastic Four, not the movie itself, but also because of the movie. But on set, he was very difficult to deal with, and they didn't want that relationship coming over. That one was fine. But then we had the what were the brothers'
Phil
names?
Lord and Chris Miller,
right? Which did exactly what they were hired to do. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, hey, make your version of Star Wars, and they're like, nope, that's too. It was probably too much like Lego Movie or something, and like too many jokes or whatever. And they're like, nah, we don't really want that. And then even a little bit with Rogue One too, with Garrett Edwards, they had to reshoot a lot of what he was trying to do, because he was trying to make it different. And I feel like because his initial pitch during Celebration 2015 was, and I think we mentioned this before, is that Rogue One was supposed to be like a war movie, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how it was marketed as at the start, and then it kind of turned more maybe into like a heisty kind of a thing, and then kind of like the fan service with like Vader at the end. But they also took him off of that as well, and then Ryan Johnson seems like the only one they actually had were okay with entirely, but the fans didn't take to him very well,
which is ridiculous.
But look how that turned out. It was one of the most It was the most divisive Star Wars film, arguably ever.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to say easily ever. Yeah, definitely. It's just we don't have to go over that.
Oh, and Colin Trevorrow. Colin Trevorrow got fired from episode 9. That's why JJ's on it right now.
It's they just need to let the creatives kind of have more personal control, and they also, if they're going to go the route of having to hammer out a film a year, they need to expand their kind of genre, as we've spoken about.
Right, and not doing it just on the same characters that we already know. It should be like things like Knights of the Republic should get some. I'm saying like not that exactly, but just like going that far away.
Out,
Exactly.
Give us some variety, because I mean, you said about how it works for Marvel and why that is, and it's definitely because of the way their character-driven stories, not in terms of the narrative specifically, but in terms of the themes and the message and the approach. When you're talking about comic books, you're talking about comic book characters, and the stories revolve around them, or the teams of them. It's not a case of the characters moving through the larger story and the story being the focus, which it kind of is with Star Wars to an extent. So you need to have, so when those films then come out and they're kind of, every film is its own year, they all have unique flavors and they all have unique kind of approaches because they're built around the characters involving them. And also, apart from anything else, you can take and leave them. You can have, I have these 3 favorite characters and I love these films, but I don't have any interest in Ant-Man, so I'll just leave that alone. With Star Wars, because of the way it's this whole, even the anthology material, it's all kind of a part of a bigger world and bigger saga that they need to, without, not just counting the stuff that you're going to miss, but you want to be a part of all of it, and you want it all to be this cohesive quality product. You don't want one film bringing the rest of it down, if you know what I mean. With Marvel, it's less precious in that way. You can experiment with it more. Star Wars needs to try and find a way to lean towards that I don't know, breadth of content without diluting itself, which is a very difficult thing to do.
Right, it is difficult task. It's hard. That's why no one wants the job. They're like, no, I don't want that responsibility.
It would have been easier if they hadn't deleted 30 years of content, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. They do, which is very, very funny that we say that they tried to do Marvel, but then didn't do Marvel at the same time. Because if they did, kind of, because in the same way that MCU isn't exactly what the original storylines of, but they are similar. You know what I mean?
And the characters are there. They draw on them. You could have drawn on characters like Jaina and Jason and told a vaguely slightly different story. Yeah. You could do that.
And
no one would
still
have
had Rey, and you could still have your Rey and Kylo or whatever. But just have them emulating those characters. Kind of
or just being alongside them as part of them in a different environment. Just you could still have everything in the modern Star Wars.
Think of it just like as an alternate universe or something.
Or anywhere.
Again, like Marvel. Marvel has a multiverse, and they visit other Earths and stuff all the time. You could easily just rationalize the MCU as being just one of those hundreds, millions of universes out there.
Easily, and I definitely don't think they should go that route with Star Wars. But there are ways around it, though.
Kind of canon since Rebels put in time travel, but we don't
talk about
time travel is the worst thing you ever put in any franchise. But
no, it can be the greatest thing ever. It just depends on the franchise. You can't put it in Star Wars and expect it to fly.
Yeah. The one thing I got to say about the time travel thing is that time travel has existed in Star Wars before, but only in one specific form, which is basically characters being hurled forwards in time by time dilation. There's no traveling back.
Yeah,
which is just like space, important. Like that. Yeah, that's just like
because
it's different from what they were alluding to.
Yeah, precisely. It's not time control. It's just time moving. Control. You can just move from one point to another. You can't actually influence it, which means you can only go forward effectively, which works. That's fine in Star Wars, and so there's been a few instances of that. But being able to go back and change things, that's just you can't do that. That kills the idea of continuity and this kind of stability of canon, which matters if you're trying to build an expansive universe. But we kind of know they weren't doing that, because otherwise they would have deleted what they already had from the start.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're clearly focusing on more of the individual story elements rather than any great tapestry, as demonstrated by The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens being completely irrelevant to each other.
Which is definitely one of the weaknesses of how Lucasfilm under Kennedy has been operating, because to me, the greatest strength of Lucasfilm under Lucas was the expanded universe, the great tapestry of material that you could draw from, which,
it wasn't perfect. It had these flaws and those continuity
errors. It had its flaws, yes, but it was there. Whereas the problem is that what the current Lucasfilm has restricted itself to, like basically just direct original trilogy tie-ins because nostalgia. Well, the problem is that the avenues that they've restricted themselves to have already been very thoroughly explored by the classic expanded universe. There's basically nothing that they can do with what they have that isn't a ripoff or a retread, because they're existing in an era, in a time frame that's already so crowded.
Well, that's the other thing as well. You say about that retreading stuff. They specifically got rid of it so they could tell new stories and go in new directions. And from what we've seen thus far, they haven't really been doing that. They
haven't done that. Yeah,
they've kept their retreading to the films predominantly, of course, but they're still just going over the same material. They're not trying anything new. And when they do, it's deliberately, actively going against what was originally coming out. Like kill it dead. Let go, kill it if you have to. It's like, why is that even within 10 miles of the message you're trying to send? It does not make sense.
It just means spirited. Yeah.
Or just stupid. It doesn't make any creative sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's something they need to focus on more, rather than the this isn't a financial issue with Star Wars. You don't have to worry because your model is wrong. It's the creative issue. They need to get someone on board who can take control of the franchise as a universe and breathe some life back into it as a creative work. Not worry about, our merchandise isn't selling enough. That sells itself. Put Star Wars on something and it will immediately sell. The problem is that's going to happen less if the original content is as lackluster as it has been of late. They need to reinvigorate
which
the
is
actual material.
Which is exactly what's happening now.
Yeah, it's like so much of it is just down to, Kathleen Kennedy herself. It's like she's more concerned with asserting her own authority than with putting out a good product. And pretty much she's strangling the franchise for the sake of her own ego.
I don't know how much of that is the case. I don't know enough about Kathleen Kennedy personally herself, but I just know from the business side, the decisions they've been making, they've been telegraphing the wrong message. If you know what I mean, there's a reason people are responding as the way they are, and not just the reactionary nuts. I'm talking about the people like us who are just having this conversation right now based on this rumor because we buy into the idea, because they're that far gone on the kind of public image that they've been presenting. They just need to take back control of what Star Wars is supposed to be as a franchise, as a work, and drive it home. They need to bring it back to its roots in a way they were trying to do with The Force Awakens, but ultimately didn't. Because they were just retreading.
And I think it could have been fine. Like, I felt like Last Jedi still had a chance to, push it forward, but they end up playing telephone with the sequel trilogy, and things. It really, there was moments in The Last Jedi where it did not feel like it was a continuation of the previous story that they were already telling. In The Force Awakens, like there was things that just disagreed with each other.
It's like one of the big things is that, Last Jedi, they basically knock Finn's character arc back to square one.
Yeah,
Phasma.
And then they don't fix Phasma for some reason.
No, they don't. And they try. They try to refit that, but it didn't work. And then
did they try though?
Luke, they tried and then they cut it out.
They tried. They definitely made an attempt, but it was very awkward and it just didn't really fit. And then the things that they did with Luke, like even just the fact that he's wearing Jedi ceremonial robes, and then he doesn't care about it the second after. There's obviously something different that JJ was trying to establish than what. And then it literally was did they not have a conversation? He's like, oh, this is what I want to do with Luke, or did Ryan hear that? Well, no, actually no, because Ryan was actually writing it, I believe, as Force Awakens was being filmed. So I guess they totally had two different ideas of oh, here's the art of Luke, but I guess take your own do what you're gonna do with it. So you're supposed to have the trilogy kind of planned out beforehand. You know what I mean?
It's
Lucas had,
it's pivotal.
Yeah. Lucas had the key stuff for the original trilogy, even though details Vader and Leia being related, and then that the Skywalkers being all related the way they wasn't really established, but the overarching arc of the whole entire thing was there was a finish line there that isn't here. There's no communication, I feel like, or there isn't a thorough enough communication going on behind the scenes.
No cohesive kind of binding agent that's keeping them all together and keeping them focused. I mean, with the original trilogy, that was the hero's journey. They had that framework going both throughout each individual film and also the trilogy as a whole. Here, they aren't following any conventional storytelling framework at all. Which I think is interesting because most of the time that's background stuff that no one even realizes is happening. But with the Last Jedi, it's so unconventional in the fact that it completely defies all storytelling logic and reasoning that even the layman's viewer who doesn't really care about that kind of thing is noticing it in the fact that it's so incoherent. It's the story beats are all over the place. The pacing is terrible. The character arcs are broken up into shattered pieces. It doesn't work as a film.
It felt like this Last Jedi, they just rushed into production with the first draft of a script and just stuck with it.
And it needed many rewrites to work. But
that's been happening too, because that's also another thing in the story is that Solo was rushed. Lucasfilm asked for more time to have it in December, but then Disney came and was like, no, we can't put any more money into it because they had reshot 70% of the movie and they gave them all this pickup money and they're like, no, we need to make our money back. We can't have you guys waiting. So that's why Lucasfilm decided to hold the standalone movies, notably Kenobi, because they want to be able to do it right and not have themselves locked into some release date that they're going to be beholden to by Disney.
Yeah, and that's a smart decision. If they're holding it to spend the right amount of time on the pieces of work, then great, brilliant, good move. But if they're holding it and they're basically doing it out of fear because Solo didn't do very well, we should probably not go full steam ahead with this until we've got a bit more money in the bank, then that's the wrong decision. They need to be doing it for creative quality
I see this mostly as a good thing that they are taking a back seat right now and being like, hey, let's actually figure out what we're doing.
Foot off the gas and just kind of figure things.
Because one of the main problems with Solo is that no one wanted the Solo film. You know, it was not a story that needed to be told in any way, shape, or form, and the one they did tell didn't invigorate the kind of dynamics of the characters at all. It just kind of went, oh, okay, so I guess this is a thing that happened to him when he was younger. Whereas with a film like Obi-Wan, while it definitely doesn't need to be told, there's stuff that you can work in there, simple stuff compelling stuff that can just bring a lot of fans back in from the nature of the fact that even from the fact that it's going to be, if they're even remotely intelligent, played by Ewan McGregor. They'll get people in for that alone, and that will give them a bit more of a financial confidence, because that will inevitably have more views than Solo. Even my friends that are fans of the franchise that have been disillusioned since The Last Jedi, and they were kind of Solo was fine. They would all flood back to the seats to see Ewan McGregor back in the role. So they have these buffers they can do, and if they make that a really good story, they can prove to the audience and regain some trust, and that the fact that they can do things right. It just comes back to that the content itself. It needs to be quality, and I don't think that getting rid of Kennedy is going to change that. It might help depending on who they put in the role, but it's more of a systematic problem.
Right now we're kind of at we're just kind of at a midpoint where we just kind of have to see where everything goes to really have any definitive results.
Well, actually, I gotta disagree about the idea of. I think getting rid of Kennedy, while it won't be a final solution, it's the first step, because so much of what's happening right now is, well, basically because of what she did and how she managed the company. It's like this woman basically stepped up and said that she wanted 50% of her writing staff to be women. And it's like, why? Why are you prioritizing that instead of saying, let's find the best writers we can possibly find regardless of who they are?
Does not matter. It does not matter.
It's just ridiculous.
Be a good writer. But it's got to be a good writer.
We'll have to see what happens with it.
Just got to be a good writer,
It's like you said, Evan. We are at a crossroads. This is the point where Star Wars will either spiral downwards and decline until the
sink or swim.
Drops. Or it will regain at least some of its former self and continue to shine. I hope it's the latter, but my hopes are not particularly high. Have to be cautious with this franchise at the moment.
Whatever happens, my course is set.
But those have been our thoughts. Antoine, do you want to close anything up with this, or is
no? That's pretty much it. Yeah, this is just like it feels like. I think episode 9's pretty much gonna happen. Whatever is gonna happen with that's happening, but it's really gonna be what comes after and what they decide to do after all of that. That's really going to define
the success of 9 will be really pivotal.
Right, because with 7 I was like, okay, like that was a fun movie. They can still like take it somewhere, but then like they didn't really, now at this point I'm like, what are they gonna do now? Like, how's JJ gonna come up in here and like fix this? Like,
it's really interesting because I genuinely have never had a film like this coming out in the future and had less of an idea than I do with the Star Wars film. I really don't know what they're going to do. That it's going to be good. They're going to have some sort of time skip. But
they have to. They should.
But will they? I mean, that's it. They'd had to not do another Death Star, and they did that. So there are lots of questions raised. It'd be interesting to see. If nothing else, it'd be interesting to see what they do with it, good or bad. But those are my thoughts on the situation. We're good to wrap up.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
I think we're good, yeah.
Okay, then. I'm Reti, and I still don't have an outro.
Sensor I1, signing off. Good night.
Evan Nova 95, we hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Antoine Vandelay, peace, love, and may the force be with you always.